Recovery from deadlock. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to explain recovery from deadlock, discuss process termination and resource preemption techniques. Introduction to recovery from deadlock. Let us consider an example. Suppose you are suffering from fever. To cure it, you will take medicines and get recovered. Similarly, once a deadlock is detected in a system through a deadlock detection algorithm, the system must be recovered from it. This can be done in one of the two ways: to inform the operator to take care of the deadlock occurrence manually. The other way is to recover the system itself from the deadlock automatically. There are two possibilities to break the deadlock in a system. They are aborting one or more processes so that the circular wait condition is broken down, and preempt some resources from one or more of the deadlocked processes. In this lesson, we will discuss the two deadlock recovery techniques: process termination and resource preemption. Process termination. Now, let's discuss the process termination technique for deadlock recovery. The deadlock can be eliminated either by aborting all the deadlocked processes or by aborting one process at a time until the deadlock cycle is eliminated. Let's discuss them in detail. Abort all the deadlocked processes. In this technique, all the deadlocked processes are terminated to break the deadlock cycle, but this may increase the cost. Also, if any process that is running for a long time is terminated, then all the computation will be discarded. The next technique is abort one process at a time until the deadlock cycle is eliminated. This technique includes an overhead because after aborting each process, a deadlock detection algorithm should be invoked to check whether any processes still exist in a deadlocked state. In both the techniques, the system reclaims all the resources allocated to the terminated processes. Aborting any process is not easy and has a certain disadvantage. For instance, if a process is in the mid of printing data on a printer, and if it is aborted, then the system must reset the printer to a correct state before starting the next task. If a partial termination technique is used, then it must determine which deadlocked process has to be terminated. The process to be terminated is selected in such a way that its termination incurs a minimum cost to the system. Apart from cost, many other factors affect the selection of a process for termination, which includes priority of the process, number of resources and its types the process has used, number of remaining resources that are needed by the process to complete its task, number of processes that need to be terminated, whether the process is an interactive or a batch process, and the time duration of the process to complete its execution. Before discussing the resource preemption, let's do an activity to check your understanding. Resource preemption. Now let's discuss resource preemption technique. An alternative way to recover the system from a deadlock state is to preempt some resources from the processes and assign them to other processes until the deadlock cycle is broken. If the preemption technique is used to deal with the deadlocks, then the following issues should be considered: selecting a victim, rollback, and starvation. Let's discuss them in detail. Selecting a victim. It means that the resources and processes to be preempted are selected in such a way that they incur a minimum cost to the system. The cost factor also contains the parameters, such as the number of resources held by a deadlocked process and the amount of time consumed by the process. Next issue is rollback. If a resource is preempted, the corresponding process must roll back to a safe state so that it restarts its execution from that state. If it is difficult to define a safe state, then the system must roll back completely. The third issue is starvation. In a system where the selection of a process is based on the cost factor, the same process may be picked up repeatedly as a victim for rollback, which results in starvation situation and the process never completes its execution. Thus, to avoid this, it must be ensured that a process can be selected as a victim only for a fixed time. Another solution is to include the number of rollbacks of a given process in the cost factor. Conclusion. Thus, you have understood that once a deadlock is detected in a system, it can be recovered using any of these techniques: process termination and resource preemption. Summary. In this lesson, you have learned that the process termination uses two methods to eliminate a deadlock: about all the deadlocked processes and about one process at a time until the deadlock cycle is eliminated. In resource preemption, some resources from a process are preempted and assigned to the other processes. If resource preemption technique is used for recovery from a deadlock, then the issues to be considered are selecting a victim, rollback, and starvation.